Am I coming across clearly to everybody? Yep. Do I need to turn it up or down, or just keep it exactly as it is? Excellent. Now, the good news is that you think you're safe because you've got a desk between you and me, but the bad news is that I'm coming out to get you. I'm going to split this into 3 sections. The first one is or the first bit is that I'm just going to talk about traditional marketing and where we are. The second part, I'm going to give you 5 rules for success, and the third part is I'm going to give you 7 characteristics which will help make success in a business context. So if I just move on, we'll start with something which is of mild interest to everybody, and that's $3 million. And I imagine that we could all think of something useful that we could do with $3 million. In fact, if you just think for a second, what would you actually apply it for? In this particular case, it's $3 million a minute that I'm thinking about. Any idea how you would spend that? It's done every year and there's a queue to do it, or at least there was. That's an American football, and it's Super Bowl. If you want to advertise for a minute, in fact, there's one 30-second slot that costs $3 million, but that's the most expensive one. If you want to advertise for a minute in the Super Bowl, in the advertising gaps, that's what it will cost you. Now, as you'd expect, that is not the sort of thing that I would do myself or expect any of you to do lightly. It is taken up by food companies, drinks companies, car companies, 1 or 2 energy companies, and drugs companies. The people who've got the big advertising spend. And some of them are really high-ranked names, like Pepsi Cola, which has been advertising in the same slot, in fact, it's in the most expensive group, but not the most expensive slot, 23 years in a row. Now, I say $3 million a minute. Actually, it costs at least 10 million to create the campaign, because that's just what you're paying for the privilege of being on air for 1 minute. $10 million at least to create the campaign. So what happened in 2010? Well, several people withdrew in 2010, which is a reflection of the times we live in, and Pepsi Cola said no. And we'll talk a little later about exactly why that is. But what we can see is that something is changing, and something is changing in the world of advertising. I use the word marketing because I'm being lazy, but let's just say, when I say marketing, I mean the promotion side of marketing. So if you use the 4 Ps, I'm only interested in promotion. And let's have a look at what it is. As far as I'm concerned, when I talk about promotion, it's any form of publication. It's any form of presentation of the features or the benefits or the associations of a brand, but not just any form. It's specifically geared at one thing. When I tell you about my product or my brand, I want to change your behavior. I want to influence you. I want to make your choices different. And traditionally, the way we've done that has been basically by clubbing you to death, hitting you with a wall of information that you don't want to make you behave differently. All the obvious stuff, press, radio, TV, I don't have to go through that list, except for the last one, maybe perception. There's a lot that goes on with advertising which is not intended for you to see it as advertising, but is still intended to promote the product or to make you aware of it or to create associations or brands or brand qualities, I suppose. Now, sometimes this works, and I'm just going to give some UK examples here. Chicken Tonight, I assume that doesn't exist in Spain, does it? I'm very pleased to hear it. Chicken Tonight was, and is, a food source. It's a pre-prepared food source that you put on initially chicken, but every other food as well. When it was first launched, a truly awful family assemble in their living room on television, and they discuss what it is they're going to eat. And then one of them says, "I feel like chicken tonight." And then, and I can hardly believe I'm going to do this when there's a camera on me, but when he says, "I feel like chicken tonight," he sticks his arms out like wings and starts to flap. And then the whole family run round, flapping their wings and shouting, "I feel like chicken tonight." It was the most unpopular advertisement for 5 years on British television. It was more hated than anything else. And the effect is that Chicken Tonight, a new food source, was the most successful ever launch in British history. So you don't have to be popular to be successful. Tango, actually, I don't know if I can do this. Can I move that? Let's just see what happens if I do this. This is a test because I'm not quite sure. Tango was a fruit drink, and the way it promoted itself. Do we get sound?
Hello, Johnny. I think we might use a video replay here.
Super, Ralph. Let's do that.
Oh, yes, we could be in for a quintessential Tango taste sensation here. Why, yes, Tony, let's look again.
Yes, Ralph. The big orange fella run in from the left, and he gives him a good old slapping.
It just illustrates the bite and buzz. Oh, of real oranges in Tango.
Yes, Ralph. Super taste sensation, smashing drink, lovely.
You know when you've been tangoed.
Fantastically successful. And I'm going to just put that back on. That was fantastically successful as a drinks advertisement. Who thought that was pleasant? Who thought it was remarkable? Because when that was first aired, children in every playground in Britain ran round behind other children and slapped them in the face, and the advertisement was banned. The result was that every child wanted to be seen with Tango. You could even buy the horrible, at one point, there's a horrible inflatable orange glove that people slap each other with. Basically, it's viral. Both of those first two are viral. The running around flapping your wings like a chicken, or the running around slapping people, they're both physical and they're viral and they're easy to imitate. But that was traditional advertising before the word, both of them, before the word viral became popular. And then Papa and Nicole, again, it's a third British example. This is almost like a soap opera where the new Renault Clio was launched, and it used to be the Renault 5. So that shows how long ago this was. Papa and Nicole were two characters who, one of them, but it wasn't obvious which, owned the Renault Clio. They both had romantic attachments, particularly Nicole, who was very pretty, and we didn't know which of several people around her she was interested in, but we knew that something was going on because she kept nearly being caught by Papa, who also had some love interest on the side as well. So there were two, it was like a soap opera. There was a whole series of advertisements. And finally, when we discovered through the whole series of advertisements, there were only 5 words used, which were Papa, Nicole, I think one of the words was Ben, and one of them was oh. I can't remember what the 5th word was. There were 5 words for the whole series of advertisements. For the final advertisement, 23 million viewers tuned in to this. That's half the population of Britain tuned in to watch the final. And in the final was like The Graduate, and Nicole runs away and gets married to one of the men who appeared earlier. At the time, she was more recognisable to British viewers than the British Prime Minister. And Renault had been one of the most poorly rated brands in Britain. It suddenly went up to being rated on a level with cars more than twice as expensive. So it became a Mercedes or BMW briefly during the course of these advertisements, and then sloped down again. Incredibly successful. And that's another one which is it's a soap opera around an instant coffee in Britain, Gold Blend, which became the prime instant coffee, and the advertisement format was taken and used again in the States. They changed the names. He was Matthew in Britain, and I think he became Martin in the States, for reasons that no one ever explained properly. Very successful again, made it a premium brand. So sometimes traditional advertising really works, but particularly if it's got some sort of emotional grip or appeal, and we'll talk about that later. Here, however, is a look at the joy that's being experienced by American newspapers right now. 2004 to 5, slight increase. 5, 6, slight decrease. 2007, significant decrease. And in the last year, or in the year to 2008, or the year of 2008, 20% decrease. 20%. And this is the prime source of their income. This is an industry in big trouble. But of course, 2009 was a better year for everybody? Not really, no. So actually, this is the beginning of the bad news, and then it just got worse. Is it just newspapers? Well, newspapers have got it worse than anybody else. But this is all advertising in the States. Starting in 2007, it went down 2.5% and then another 9%. That's all advertising, and that includes cable TV, which has actually had a slight improvement, and it includes online advertising, which did improve in 2008 and then leveled out and slight dip in 2009. And it's not just the States, it's even worse if you look at it worldwide. The dip is sharper worldwide. So something terrible is happening to the world of advertising. Or you could argue, if you don't like advertising, that something great is happening to the rest of us. So marketing. What I'm saying is marketing, by which I mean promotion. Marketing is broken. Well, actually, am I really saying marketing is broken? Because I don't want to overstate the case. Actually, I really do want to overstate the case because that's much more amusing. But I don't want you to get the wrong idea. Marketing's not actually broken. It's still there. But what's different is content now. For a whole variety of reasons, content is different. And the reason content is different is it's right now at the heart of marketing. You cannot market something without having true content and true value there. So if there's one key word here, it is the word content. And I can't emphasize that enough. On the other hand, I do want to be subtle about it. So I don't want to repeat myself in any way at all. But it is content that's at the center here. Now, which car am I advertising? Anybody recognize the brand? If that's an advertisement...
A safe one.
Exactly. If that's an advertisement, I'm advertising safety. Now that you know I'm advertising safety, which car is it?
Safest car.
Well, and which is the safest car? Okay, not specifically the winner of a prize, but which car do you most associate with safety? Absolutely, Volvo, yep. And is Volvo the safest car? We don't know. All we know is if you're worried about safety, you'll go to Volvo first, because that's the car you associate with safety. And as it turns out, other cars do better in some safety tests. So it depends what you want. But the reason that we go to Volvo is the little chap in the middle. It's because, like so much advertising, it's based on fear, or guilt, or uncertainty, or doubt. And so, yes, it can advertise, it can offer genuine value, but it really is, well, safe cars. Have you got children? Are you going to buy an unsafe car? Really? You just don't care then? So you are going to buy a safe car because you just can't accept that sort of criticism. Healthy food. Is it really healthy? Look at the health drinks. They've all changed. Tab, for example, which is an energy drink, started off with a banned substance. Then it went on to saccharin. Well, that was all right then, except that's banned too now. So each time we change the contents, but we don't change the general message, which is this is a healthy drink. Perfect bodies. It's great, isn't it? All you have to do is stare at somebody and go a few times, and the self-doubt comes in. Then I can sell you anything. It's wonderful. Encyclopedias. Why did we buy encyclopedias? I bought one because I thought I was giving the best possible chance to my children, and I did it immediately before the whole computer wave came in and the sensible parent was actually buying computers for his or her children rather than buying encyclopedias. And of course there's the whole terror of salvation, which is sold by some very unscrupulous people in small sects around the place. There's some really quite nasty advertising and some intentional targeting, particularly of adolescents. So there's this pushing at people who you feel have no choice, yeah, it's okay, but it's not great. Let's go back to value and content. When I say content, I mean value of any sort. Value is genuine utility delivered. It is genuine, useful information delivered. It is entertainment delivered. And in order to get it delivered, it needs to be visible. Now, the reason this is a change, I'm not suggesting that as a race, that human beings didn't like value 20 years ago. The difference now is an economic difference, search and transaction costs. It now costs us nothing to seek value. It's there, it's ready for us, it's pulling us in, we are attracted to it. And so, if we're looking for content, where are we going to go? That is the share of all worldwide searches that were done through Google. So Google is our window onto value. Google is what changes our relationship with all the suppliers of almost every product that we consume. It doesn't do away with anything previously. I did measure this. It's 36 meters between the top of the metro and the front door. And I counted over 200 messages, different messages, which were intended to change my opinion as I walked those 36 steps. And then I gave up counting because there is more to life, really, isn't there? But hundreds and hundreds of messages, and yet the conscious ones I'm going to look for through Google. This really is, I mean, Google and search engines and the web and the accessibility and the change in the economic structure of looking for value. This has driven a whole bunch of new businesses based on user-generated content. Why do we go to Amazon? Is it just because it sells books? No, it sells books and it has customer reviews. It has star ratings. And that's what I use, and that's what most of us use. TripAdvisor is exactly the same thing. Go to a hotel in a country you don't know. Are you going to take the risk? No. Just because you've seen it in a brochure. You're going to look and see, of the 400 people who commented, do they think it's 1 star or 4 stars or 5 stars? Do they think it was a good experience or a bad experience? And then there are whole places like YouTube and Spotify and Cloud Sound, and all of which are based around giving us the opportunity to contribute our own work. As a result, they become successful, but it's our stuff that goes in. We are at the center of all of this. Facebook, LinkedIn, all the blogs, all the forums. More of our information is being garnered from voluntary contributions like this, but often mediated by a paid, by a paid agent or a paid structure. It's not just that. Time magazine's Person of the Year in 2006, you, front cover. Clay Shirky's really excellent book, 2008, Here Comes Everybody, which has got the most marvellous story of the stolen mobile phone, if anyone knows it. Somebody had their mobile phone, it wasn't stolen, they left it in the back of a taxi, it ended up with somebody, and they knew that because they went to their provider, got a new phone, and the new phone downloaded all the contacts and so on, because the old one was still in contact. What it also downloaded was the new photographs that had been taken with that phone. And the photographs were repeatedly of the same person or the same couple of people. In fact, it was the person who now had the phone. So they rang that person and said, could I please have my phone back? And the answer was, no, you can't. And there was quite an unpleasant debate that went on, including the new owner got her brother, who was a military policeman, then to email this person back and say, right, stop hassling my sister, otherwise me and my friends will come round and I'm in the military police. The result of all this was that the person whose phone it was got a friend involved, it became a website, it got millions of hits. I don't know what the number was, but it was more than 3 million, because quite early on they hit 3 million. At one point, the server hosting it broke down. The guy was getting 10 emails of support per second. Can you imagine the size of that audience there? And eventually what happened was the phone was returned, there were apologies, the police refused to prosecute the girl until hundreds of people got involved, including New York police, and eventually those rules were changed. The police then did something even more stupid. They then tried to prosecute the original owner of the phone for having material that they shouldn't have had because it had been sent to them by a policeman. Inside information about the case. Well, you just can't do that anymore because it's too visible. So the people who were involved there have been disciplined, and they're for abuse of privilege. You cannot bully people just because you're in a position to do so anymore. And the last one is the customer chorus. And oh, actually, do we want a little diversion? Yes, come on, I'm going to tell you another story. There was a nice young chap who travelled on, I think, United Airlines. So I'm just going to see if I can find United Airlines. Actually, one of the problems here is that, yeah, guitar. Do you think that's enough to find the content I want? United Breaks Guitars. This guy with his band took a flight on United Airlines.
I flew United Airlines on my way to Nebraska. The plane departed Halifax, connecting in Chicago's O'Hare. While on the ground, a passenger said from the seat behind me, "My God, they're throwing guitars out there." The band and I exchanged a look, best described as terror, at the action on the tarmac, and knowing whose projectiles these would be. So before I left Chicago, I alerted 3 employees who showed complete indifference towards me. United, United, you broke my Taylor guitar. United, United, some big help you are. You broke it, you should fix it. You're liable, just admit it. I should have flown with someone else or gone by car.
Okay. I just want you to see the figure, if you can read it. If you can't read it, I'm going to read it there. 8,210,086 reproductions. How much would it cost you to buy advertising like that? Because that was not pushed at me when I was doing something else or making a cup of tea. I sought that, I looked for it, and everyone else who has watched it looked for that piece of information. They were concentrating when they watched it. It's more than 10 times as valuable as getting 80 million eyes on that. The effect? First of all, United said it was not their problem. There are websites, there are other videos, there are probably 20 or 30 videos now about United. Everybody else who has a complaint made their own as well. Eventually, they caved in. This guy has got a great music career as a result of it. This is, oh dear, that is really bad. This is the era of us. It is really bad because I don't know where we've got to. Let's just, I think we're there. That's it. So that was the customer chorus. You can see the power that was never in our hands before. The days when, because you are a large organization, you can feed me information which I'm expected to accept. Those days are gone. And it completely changes the dynamic, and it completely changes the way any business deals with its customers. I'm not going to look at what influences us now, but here's an interesting thing about trust. If you tell me something, that a restaurant is good, I'm 90% likely to believe it. If a banner ad tells me, would you like to guess what proportion of trust you have in information on a banner ad? There are 2 quite well-known statistics. One is 2% and one is 8%. Television advertisement, 60%. That's because people think that if you're committing to television, you're putting resources into it. TV, 60% there. But look, 90% believed. And that's why viral is so powerful. Because if you can get one message to spread, and the mathematics of spread are dead simple. If I hear that story and I tell one person, then that's fine. It just goes on like a snake. One person knows it, one person passes it on. If I tell two people, that's an infection. Everybody gets to hear it. And if I tell half a person, then the story will go 2 or 3 rounds and die. So anything greater than 1 is successfully viral. So 5 rules. There are 5 rules that I'm going to suggest here. And rule 1 is be seen. There is just no point in producing good content which nobody can see. And how do you get seen? Well, have a brand. That helps. That's the traditional way to do it. Have a brand. Location. Put yourself in places like the 36 meters between here and the metro where people will see your content. That's how to influence them. But really, search engines. If you're going to do something intentional, just use the search engines. This I particularly like. The search term I put in here was SEO, search engine optimization. Now, you need to know that those 3 paid to be there, okay? So all you know about those 3 is they have the money to put themselves at the top of that page. This one here is Wikipedia, talking about SEO. This one is completely different. It's a different form of SEO, Sponsors for Educational Opportunity. There's Google talking about how to do SEO. And there is a company called SEO.com who will sell you their expertise in doing well in those rankings. Now, I have to say that there are 192 million pages that rank for the expression SEO. And these guys have come 5th. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. They've come 4th. That's pretty impressive, isn't it? So they don't need to tell me anything else. I already believe them now. Because whatever it is they're doing it right. They are offering to sell me SEO, and quite clearly they are brilliant at it. What's interesting is if I change the search term so that it isn't SEO, but it's search engine optimization, those same guys don't appear. And that tells you something about Google. Because every time SEO appears for SEO.com, they do well. But what they don't do, what Google loves is this. It likes your title to have the words in it. So these guys will be ranking for both. But it also, SEO Consult, that would do well under SEO. It likes to have the words in your website and in your title. So there are ways, although I'm saying that Google is opening the world up and going beyond manipulation, there are ways to influence search engine rankings. And Google is not the only tool. There is the whole network of connected links. There's no point in going through all of those. Actually, maybe there's one that I ought to do. 2. University sites. The reason they're there is because if there's a link to me from a university site, Google makes an assumption. University site with a .edu domain name. It makes the assumption that that is a safe and a trusted and a reviewed domain name. And so I get extra points because something on a .edu site links to me. So if I was a business, I'd really like to be sponsoring events with links back to me at every university because it does great things for my rankings. Publication is amazing, particularly because it tends to hit multiple times. It fans out. PPC, pay-per-click. And actually, for this purpose, I'm going to go back to. Generally, most people do not click on these top ones because they're paid for and they don't carry the same trust that we feel in other ones who we feel have somehow earned through a mechanism that's too secret for most people, including these guys who are experts to understand. We feel the other guys have earned it, those guys have paid for it. So is there any value in pay-per-click? Yeah, there is actually. There really is, particularly if it's quick and if it's experimental. You can put that up at the top and see whether you have something that has a click-through rate. You can put 2 different versions of a pay-per-click advertisement in and see whether one appeals more or less. And I'll show you later on where 2 different versions of something slightly different made a difference for a company. If you've got real value, don't hide it. This is a story I told before. You've heard it before now. About a guy who wrote a fantastic novel, A Confederacy of Dunces, and then he didn't tell anybody he'd written the novel. He committed suicide, and his mother found it under his bed. It's just a heartbreaker, because it's one of the most brilliant novels. It's very funny, but it's obviously quite autobiographical. It's about a guy who is completely inadequate, but also brilliant. And quite clearly, it's about him. But the shame is that he never lived to enjoy it, and nobody would have seen it if his mother hadn't found it. So you've got to be visible. Make sure you're visible. And if it has any value, don't hide it. Just don't bother. Total waste of your time and of everybody else's. If you're doing work which has no value, you shouldn't be doing it. So rule 2, be sincere. Now, be sincere like a pure sparkling water. Yep. They had the majority, or they had the biggest share of the European sparkling water market, and I know that Spain was slightly different, but in Northern Europe, total control, more than 50% of the UK market. And in fact, such a reputation for purity and all sorts of other things. It used to say naturally sparkling on it. It used to say no fat content, which is a ridiculous thing. Perrier was pure water. And one day a laboratory in America, who were testing tap water, because that's what they were paid to do, said, well, let's just see whether the tap water is okay. We'll test it against Perrier and see which is better. They tested the Perrier and, well, anyone, what is that? That is benzene. Yummy. Benzene is a great way to give yourself cancer. And there are all sorts of limits about how much you're allowed in the water. There's an EC limit, or an EU limit, and they were about 4 to 10 times above that limit. That's pure Perrier. So the American laboratory made a big fuss about that and went to Perrier and said, this is unacceptable, do something about it, and withdraw the bottles. Perrier said, no, you just got some bad bottles there, it's a bad batch, and there's a fault in the bottling. And the American laboratory said, we don't care whether there's a fault in the bottling. We want to know that you've done something about it. So Perrier said, we've now tested. There is no way that any benzene could have got into our water. It must have been at the bottling stage, and we've changed the processes there. Now, later on, they discovered that actually there is naturally occurring benzene in the water in Perrier. It bubbles up through the ground, and it has quite a high benzene level. And what Perrier have done for years is they've stripped that benzene out of the Perrier. They strip all the bubbles out, and then they put them back in, having filtered the benzene out. So they were just lying. They said, there's no way benzene could have got in. We know nothing about this. It must have happened elsewhere. No, there's benzene in the water. You just failed to take it out, is what happened. Anyway, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. 50% market share in the UK went down to about 6%. In America, it went down to about 9%, and everybody started to have a go at them. The Canadians said you can't have naturally occurring on that anymore because it's not naturally sparkling. The water you took was naturally sparkling, but then you took the sparkle out, and then you put it back in artificially. So take naturally sparkling off. And then somebody else said, well, and anyway, what's low fat about? That's dishonest. Yes, it's low fat, but you're implying that other water has fat in it, which of course it doesn't. So one after another, as soon as we didn't believe in them anymore, we didn't believe anything they said. And they've done incredible harm. Now they've come back and it's fine, although ironically they're now owned by Nestle. I don't know if that seems like a joke, but it does to me. So be scientific is the third rule. Be scientific. You either measure things, or we've all got an amazing instinct. There's a book, Blink, about how powerful our instincts are. The trouble is they are unerringly wrong. When you remember things, you make it up. It's just what you remember is convenient. You filter, you change, and as time goes on, particularly if you talk about a memory, it changes structure. So memory is unreliable. And if people ask, well, there are famous cases where a murderer or someone witnesses a murder, and over the course of a week of helping the police, the person they saw changes race. At one point it was a white person, later on it became distinctly black. It happens time and time again, and it kind of depends on the way you're asked the questions. I mean, that's pretty major. We've had things where someone distinctly saw a woman enter a room. A week later, it was a man who entered the room. That's changed in their minds. Nobody else has moved it. So people's minds aren't reliable. Money is incredibly unreliable. If you pay people for things, you can actually stop them from performing well. Sometimes. Sometimes money is a genuine incentive. But sometimes, if you paid the people who put Wikipedia together for doing it, you would have destroyed Wikipedia and prevented it from ever happening. Because what you would have done is damaged everything that's good about Wikipedia. So be careful about money. Money is not the motivator that people think it is. Magic is just a symptom of the fact that we believe what is convenient to believe. And if somebody understands that, it is so easy to make you think you've seen something you haven't seen. So magicians are professional manipulators. They're normally very lowly paid, but their confederates who work in the marketing world are highly paid and have better scientific help when it comes to manipulating us. So we have to be careful. And there are all sorts of things about motivation and just changing the way people behave. And to manipulate almost anybody is too easy with very simple rules. One is to tell you that everybody else is doing this, and you'll want to do it too. And the two obvious examples are, if you show somebody a picture of damaged lungs and say this has been done by smoking, look at the danger to the lungs, look at the effect of the cancer, here's a cancer patient afterwards, here's what's happened to their circulation. And you show that to a group of school children, and in the picture it shows school children smoking, and you go, think of the damage they're doing. They only take one message out of that, and that is, school children like us smoke. That's the message. So that will make children smoke if you show them that video. Because what they see is people just like us doing it. And incidentally, we don't trust experts as much as somebody who reminds us of ourselves. So you should think of that when you're marketing to a particular audience. Don't put the world's leading expert up there. Put someone who looks like them and is clearly somebody who has similar interests. And reciprocation, if I want you to do something for me, all I have to do is make you feel that I've done something for you first. And then you will be twice as likely to do that for me. Not something we should spend too much time on. If you put a product on the top shelf, it adds 20% to visibility and 20% in sales. Now this is really interesting, and it's come from a piece of work in visual equity where they actually monitored people's eyes and the sales effect and so on. For years we thought that anything at eye level was what sold most. That looking up was too much, looking down was too much. We thought it was eye level, but in fact, it's top shelf. People see it from further away, they scan from top down as they come around a corner. They remember the products on the top shelf, they buy them more, and even if they don't buy them, when they remember them, they have a higher value because they were on the top than they did before. But you can't ask a consumer that, because consumers don't know they're thinking that. You can measure it, you can see the effect, but you can't ask an opinion. So we've got to observe, and online, we observe how many visitors we get, how many repeat visits we get, all this standard monitoring stuff, and yet this is where people fall down. It is so easy to measure online. It is so easy to experiment, and if we don't experiment, we just don't know. Subscriptions are an amazing thing. It gives you an immediate indication of whether or not what you are saying is valued by your customers. Retweets as well. So is it just me? Am I making too much of this? Because it's a real, this has been bothering me for years and years and years. I really think we don't measure enough. Well, it's not just me, actually. Jeff Bezos sacked 10 or 12 designers because they fail, and they're not even marketeers, they're just designers, because they did not approach it scientifically. They did not check when they changed designs for Amazon. And he just basically said, there is a really good job waiting for you somewhere else, which will value your skills, but I don't. I have a friend who has a company called HubDub, which he set out to use gambling to predict. For example, you can bet on the outcome of an election. This is quite a common, economists love this. If you encourage people to bet on something, you get a much better view than individual experts. It's crowdsourcing than individual experts can come up with. So they set up this site to do that. For a long time, they didn't get enough people on the site, and they put free membership up. To the nearest percent, if you put free membership of a site that offers you an opportunity to bet on things, what sort of take-up would you expect to get? I can tell you what his take-up was. It was 0%. So you say, well, that's because it was a bad site, it had no visibility. No, it wasn't that. It was because of us. We went on there and we saw a site offering us something we can buy elsewhere, gambling sites and so on, for free. Do you trust that? Nobody trusted it. So in the end, what they did was they changed it, and they said, you can have a limited free membership, or you can pay for a premium membership. And people went, oh, I see. They want us to take the free membership, and then they're going to try and sell us onto the premium one, but I'm too good for that. So hundreds of people signed up, or thousands of people signed up for the free membership then, because then they understood what the game was. Now, they were about to give this up. They were going to shut the whole thing down until one guy, the fellow who was mentoring them, just said, try offering the free one, yeah, but add a paid one as well. And as soon as you add the paid one, people feel comfortable because they understand what the mechanism is. They don't feel they're being exploited. And sentiment. How often is the work on this site mentioned? Are the comments good or bad? Are people engaged? Are they replying? Look for keywords, both in the replies, but keywords that you've seeded reappearing in social media. And of course, look, you have performance indicators and look at the trajectory. It doesn't matter if you've got 12,000 subscribers. What matters is how many did you have last month? Because if you had 22,000 last month, then although 12,000 is perhaps impressive, you are doomed. And test everything all the time. Understand the system. Yeah, there really isn't time to go into all of this, but rabbits were introduced to Australia. That's a mistake. Because they went wild. They had a purpose at the time, but they went wild and they formed an incredible problem. Another environmental one is the nature reserve where foxes were eating rare bird eggs. So the park rangers brought in some expert hunters to kill every fox on the site, and a year later every bird died. That is because they were fiddling with a machine they didn't understand. And the reason the birds died was the foxes, yes, they ate birds' eggs, but mostly they ate frogs. So the following year there were millions, well, certainly over 1 million more frogs. Those frogs ate all the insects as they hatched and the birds starved. So don't play with the system unless you understand it. And that comes from motivation too. Don't tinker with motivation and be really careful about overpaying people. Particularly, never overpay volunteers because you switch them off and you make them against the system. This is just a ridiculous example. Men wanted for hazardous journey. The features of this: low wages, bitter cold, long hours of complete darkness, safe return doubtful. It is irresistible, isn't it? And there's one more line, which is honour and recognition in event of success. In the London Times in 1913, 5,000 applications in 3 days. How good is that? And how obvious is that in advance? If I offer you physical misery for no reward, would I expect to be absolutely flooded with offers like that? Astonishing, isn't it? Rule 4, be the source. So look at something like Website Grader. Website Grader is run by a couple, Dharmesh Shah and Brian Halligan, and they have a company whose name I can't remember. I think they have a book anyway called Inbound Marketing. If you go to websitegrader.com, which they also own, and you put your website URL in, it will grade your website. It will tell you about your traffic, about your links, about your mentions, about your use of space, about the interlinking, about how well you do on page ranking. And if you put in 2 or 3 others, it will compare you against your competitors or your peer group. So you will know how well you're doing. That's an amazing thing. And it comes from 2 people who would actually like to sell me online marketing services. Well, I totally believe them now. I go to them anyway, and I go to them with all my websites now about this, because it's free. There are various others. Yahoo runs a very, very good thing that looks at inbound links and tells you where your competitors are getting their traffic from. Amazing. Makes you believe it. In Yahoo's case, though, that may not last for very much longer. I think there is some doubt in my mind about what's going to happen to their search engine and whether or not that service will go on. But in this case, these guys who've written a really good book, and they've got that really good website, do I believe them? Oh, yeah. And when I need help, will I go to them first? Yes, I will start there. They are the source of that form of expertise that I'm looking for, and I'm really impressed. So here are the 5 rules. Be seen, be sincere, be scientific, and be the source. And that's, oh good, and be central. You want to be at the middle. You want all the links to point into you. If anyone is looking for what it is I think I do, I want everywhere they go to point at me. And you don't have to, when I say be the source, you don't have to, in every case, be the source of original material. Some of the most popular websites on the entire net, well, like YouTube, do not generate the content, but they aggregate it. And it doesn't matter as long as, from the consumer point of view, you are the source. Here's an example I think is really good. In Barcelona, there is a girl, Maria Lorenzo, who was an internet marketer and is no longer because those jobs went. So she finds herself looking for something new to do. What she wants to do is to set up an internet-based business. Possibly social media. And what does she do about it? Well, just look here. Marketing firm redundant at the end of February, and she wants to start her internet business. She's never started a business before. How would you make yourself look appealing? Well, this is what she did. She set up on meetup.com a group called Wiki People, and she set that up on the 21st of February. It's only had 1 meeting so far, with 1 more this week. 17 people at the first meeting, 50 members. All of those are internet designers, programmers, apps designers, Java programmers. What she's done is she's targeted this at the group of people that she most wants to do business with. It's fantastic because she is now the center of their world. They will meet for dinner later this week. They will all be together in the same place, and Maria is the center of their world. Now, imagine that you are a typical internet... Is anyone here a programmer? Oh, good, I can be as rude as I want then. So, okay, you are a programmer. You keep very strange hours. You may or may not have very many friends. You have an interesting but not ambitious dress sense. And you may have personal hygiene issues. But you're very, very effective. You program really well. Where are you going to meet somebody who is going to help you exploit your ability? And the answer is you go along to a group just for people like you, run by Maria, who is demonstrating that she has all the social skills, all the organization skills, and all the awareness that you need. This girl is amazing. I want to do business with this girl. I think she's fantastic. She has put herself at the middle of her own world. Brilliant. She is central. She's also seen, she's quite sincere about it because she's putting her effort into it and actually improving. She's delivering direct value to those people who are getting a social impact from it. They're getting the networking impact, and they're getting the opportunity maybe to work with her or just to exchange ideas. So this brings us on to the last section, 7 characteristics of success. And just for a moment here, I think I can pretty much guarantee you that none of this content will be of any relevance whatsoever. This will be totally irrelevant, okay? But it may have a message. This is Ben. I don't know. Yeah. Ben is not quite 3 years old in that picture. But you can see he's putting on a little bit of weight, isn't he? Ben was owned by Emma's parents, and Emma's father died, so Emma's mother had the dog. And Emma worked in London. When Ben was about 6, Emma got married to a guy, we'll call him Ben too, because that was his name. So she had a Ben at home living with her mother, and she was married to Ben and living in a very nice house in London because her husband Ben was a banker. But unfortunately then her mother died and she ended up looking after Ben. So she had 2 Bens in the house. Now, we knew them for one reason or another, but on the other side, she and Ben, when this Ben was then 13, which is pretty good actually, particularly for a dog, he was a lot bigger then. When he was 13, she and Emma and Ben, husband and wife, went off to Thailand. And they left Ben there with a friend of ours, well, in fact, not a friend, but a friend of a flatmate of my niece, Claire. And Claire went and lived in the house and looked after Ben. And to give you an idea, who's familiar with London? They live down in that left-hand corner, very, very nice part of London to live in. So Claire went and moved in there. She normally lives up in Camden. But the good thing is that she worked near Piccadilly. So it was actually much better for her. She was delighted. She lived in a really nice house, and she had the 2 weeks while they were in Thailand. Wonderful. As I say, this is completely irrelevant, so you can just enjoy it and relax. And on the 3rd day of looking after it, she came home. This is, if you walked Green Park, 1, 2, 3 stops she had to go. 3 stops. So she could come home at lunch and walk Ben, and which she did every day. But on the 3rd day, she walked him at lunchtime. She came home, and do we know where this is going? Ben was lying on the carpet, 6:30 at night, not moving at all, and was indeed dead. So she was left in a very odd position here because, for obvious reasons, Emma, because it had been her parents' dog and then both her parents had died, and Emma was deeply attached to this dog in a way which was almost irritating to other people. What do? You have a dead dog and 10 days to wait. So she rang an emergency vet, and the emergency vet said, "That's okay, I can come and take the dog away." And she said, "Well, you can't just destroy the dog because she needs to see the dog when she comes home." Is that a good decision or a bad decision, do you think? It's a good decision, yeah. The trouble is there's only one place in London where there's a pet mortuary, and it's just near Farringdon, which is incredibly irritating to get to. So the following morning, having left Ben in a back room on a roll-up carpet, she then had to get Ben somehow to Farringdon. Now Claire's job is pretty menial, and she doesn't have a lot of cash, and a taxi drive across London is unthinkable. So she decided she was going to take Ben. She also made a really bad error of judgment. Well, two in fact. How do you take, Ben weighed a lot more than he did in that first picture. How do you take him across London on the tube? Suitcase, yeah? Put him in a suitcase. Obviously a wheelie suitcase. And then she made the big mistake because she'd agreed to take a friend who lived and worked in the Barbican. She agreed to take his skis back to him at the same time. Now, even the suitcase was an interesting decision, but the skis were a very interesting decision. You can imagine having a very big Labrador in a bag and a set of skis over your shoulder. When you turn around, you kill people. Okay? And she got as far as that King's Cross link and discovered that the second escalator did not work. So she got to the bottom and she swung around and tried to pick the dog up, and frankly, you just can't do it with one hand. I mean, you just can't. It's too heavy, and she's much smaller than me. So while she was doing that and killing people as they went past, but with the skis that were sticking out, an incredibly helpful guy came along and said, "Are you okay? Do you want me to carry something for you?" And she said, "Yeah," and she was going to hand the skis over. And he said, "Look, I'll take the suitcase because it's much heavier. It's obviously much heavier." So she went, "Okay." And just at that moment, a little flicker of worry went through her mind, but it was fine. And the guy grabbed it, and up he went, up the stairs, both hands on the suitcase. And then she picked up the skis, which at that point she'd put down because you can only go on for so long. And when she got to the top of the stairs, there was a barrier. And on the other side of the barrier, she saw a guy with a suitcase running as fast as possible away, stealing the suitcase. Now, the story actually stops there, and you can make up what happened next for yourself. But there is a reason. Yeah, I'll come back to it. As I say, I did promise it was irrelevant. There was nothing of any relevance there at all, was there? I hope not. There should have been nothing. So, I'm going to talk about the 7 characteristics. If you want content to be good, I think it should be simple. It should be unusual, credible, communicable, engaging, satisfying, and it should actually be a story. So I'm going to come back to this. Simple stuff, parables, tales, jokes. Just make it easy. Don't overcomplicate. Make it unusual so it's got a little bit of something with some bite in it. Or useful. It should be credible. Not necessarily true, but it should be credible. So, for example, how well did I know the people in... See, I knew all about Emma and Ben, but you know I didn't. It's all rubbish, isn't it? And I knew about Claire, but I don't know these people's names, and I never knew their names. But it makes the story better. And ideally, if you can make it concrete in some way so that you can see it with a video or a picture, showing a picture of the dog, completely changes that story. Because you can almost now feel the weight of that dog in the suitcase. It's got to be communicable. Here's an interesting thing. Out of Nessun Dorma, could somebody sing me Nessun Dorma just to remind me of what it's like? Yes, Biel, are you volunteering? No, okay. Will somebody just sing me Nessun Dorma? Do you all know it? Would you recognize it? Well, I'm afraid it's not going to happen then. Okay, Nessun Dorma is a fantastic, really uplifting piece by Pavarotti. Well, at least that's why it's so famous. Absolutely amazing. Which of these is the more impressive? Oh, Nessun Dorma is just, it's fantastic. Who has sung Happy Birthday this year? Nobody. Yeah, one person has sung, 2 people have sung Happy Birthday. Have you really not sung not at all this year? No. Yeah? Yeah. Okay. In the last 12 months. Good, excellent. The reason that Happy Birthday, which is a much, much less impressive piece, is so popular is because it's so easy. I can't sing, and even when I do it, it's obvious what I'm singing. Whereas if I tried to give you Nessun Dorma, even people who knew it really well wouldn't know what it was. So it's the ease of communication. That is just too easy. gestures are just fantastic. If you can have a hand signal or those awful tango advertisements or the chicken tonight with the flapping wings, anything that's really easy, or I don't know if you remember the Budweiser advertisements with just the noise "was up." Incredibly irritating, but almost funny in a way, and repeated all the time. People made their own videos about it. Whatever it is, if something's emotional or personal, it has much more traction. People get more excited by it, they live it, they believe it. If it's puzzling or challenging, it gives us a personal reward straight away. Yeah, this is interesting. CompareTheMarket.com is a site that sells car insurance, among other things. So if you put in the search "compare the market," you find that CompareTheMarket.com comes first. What is interesting is that the main competitors, Confused.com, GoCompare.com, have paid for those two sites, and strangely, Compare the Market themselves, which are first in the list, have also paid for an advertisement. Now, why would people be paying for that? It's because it's such a powerful brand, and this is why. CompareTheMeerkat.com. This, by the way, is a meerkat. There's a site called CompareTheMeerkat.com, and there's an advertisement about it. And in fact, does this work? Shall I see if I can... Ooh, something happened.
I am Alexander, founder of CompareTheMeerkat.com, where we compare meerkats. Size, hobbies, you know. But lately we get many people looking for car insurance. People looking for CompareTheMarket.com. I cannot find you cheap car insurance. For compare meerkats, come to CompareTheMeerkat.com. For easy way to save on car insurance, please go to CompareTheMarket.com. Simples.
Now, that little gesture at the end and the noise, which I'm tempted to do, and I can't do it, that is imitated by school children all over the place, because it's just so easy to imitate and to pass on. There are videos of people trying to do or to make that noise or to imitate them in one way or another. Let's just... There we go. Now, if you actually click on that site, CompareTheMeerkat.com, you still find the link to CompareTheMarket.com, but Compare the Meerkats. It's easy to find the right meerkat for you. Select what you're looking for. You can choose whether you want large, medium, or small meerkats. The hobbies, there are about 40 different hobbies there. You have chess playing, windsurfing, different types of meerkat, and they're all in different parts of the world. Most of them have pictures, some of them have personal profiles, and they send messages to each other too. It is extraordinary. You can meet the team, there's a video library, there are also the old videos with this chap in, and there are now spoof videos. There's a whole video with him preparing for that first advertisement and getting the words wrong. And he gets the words wrong. At one point he shuts the book and dust comes out of the book and he starts sneezing. It's entertaining, it's very silly, and part of it is the disbelief. You can't believe that someone has put so much effort into making this ridiculous site, but it is funny. So make sure that the content is satisfying in some way or another, delivers value or completeness or resolution of something. Reward your users because they've chosen to come to you and they don't have to come back again. Jokes can have all sorts of purposes. Can you all read this joke? There's no place like 127.0.0.1. On a scale of 1 to 10, how funny is that joke? 1? Not even that. That's not a funny joke, is it? That T-shirt sells a lot. Do you know what it means? There's no place like home. Yep. 127.0.0.1 is It's the starting IP address, the home IP address of each computer while it's running. If I ask that computer to go to that, it goes to itself. So if I have it on my T-shirt, it says there's no place like home, but it says something quite different. It tells you, if you understand the joke, that I am part of the same team and the same tribe as you. What it does is it shows membership. And that's why, although it's a joke, it's not funny, but it does deliver some value. And don't kill your host. The number of times people misunderstand the world that they're in. People sponsored by someone are critical about the sponsor. The number of times people think that for some reason today is a good day to make the racist joke, when you know it's going to do incredible damage. Why do people do this? I'm going to give an example. I was going to give an example, but I won't, I think. Stories, always, we just respond to stories. We're built to make stories. We're built to understand them. We want resolution from everything. In the same way, we like pattern. If I show you two dots, if this was a graph and I show you a dot there and a dot there, we're automatically starting to assume that the third dot is going to come up there. But it may not be. It may be a circle that I'm drawing. If you look at clouds or you look at anything, you'll see faces in it, because we're trained to look for patterns from when we're hours old. We recognize faces as our first pattern. So we see them everywhere. This is why it's so easy to mislead us. But in this case, it's so easy to satisfy us. Give us a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end, a resolution. 3 repeats for a fairy story. Doesn't work the second time. It does work for the third time. That's satisfying, because you've built up expectation and then you're rewarding your listener. And give it a bit of structure. I'm not going to do, with the Labrador, put in locations and names, show the tube map. Incidentally, just so that you know, the Labrador story is complete fake, okay? Which I hope you assumed anyway. But it gets better if you put the stories in and you show the dog and you show the names. And then Google. I'm going to finish off with this. Pretty much. Now that should be a warning sign to you when I say pretty much. So Pepsi didn't turn up at Super Bowl. That is important for a couple of reasons. One is, I've finally worked out how to do that. One is that is a perfect example of a story. It is very simple. It is unusual. It's fairly concrete, because there were details in there that we recognize about Paris. There were details looking for truffles and Truffaut and so on. It was actually a story with a resolution and a tale, and it had an emotional grip to it. And perhaps most significant of all, that is what took the Pepsi slot at Super Bowl this year. That unusual, very crisp, tiny, strange little story from Google. And all it does is it reminds people that Google is everywhere and is now mainstream, well, has for ages been a mainstream player. So Google has moved in to the Super Bowl at the same time that Pepsi's moved out. And it's, I think, satisfied pretty much all of those characteristics. Simple, unusual, credible, communicable, because you can email it to people or the link to people. Engaging, satisfying, and it's a story. And as for Pepsi, they decided not to take part because they've changed what they're trying to do. They're promoting a campaign, the Refresh campaign, for good causes. and they didn't want to spend $10 million on a Super Bowl advertisement because they thought that was inconsistent with spending a lot of money on good causes. And instead, and I contrast this with Google's Don't Be Evil, Pepsi's Do Good, and here's a list of what's going in. There's still $1.3 million worth of funding available. Pepsi is positioning itself at the center of a community of people who want to take action to improve other communities. It's actually trying to relate, and there is a competition to be good now because Disney is doing this and so are other people. But this is interesting. This is where that $10 million went, and indeed another 30 million on top of it, 40 million in total. So the bottom line is this. You are what you do, and that is highly visible. People will see it. People will recognize it. You can't be a fake anymore, and if you try, you will be punished. So do what you think you are good at. Choose a sensible area to compete in and be the absolute best at it. And whatever you do, be remarkable. Thank you.